So to recap, in 1933, an ounce of gold was worth $20.67. About this thing. And now today it's trading for about $1,200, or a 58-fold increase in less than 100 years. That, my friends, is what money supply inflation looks like. $20 no longer buys what it used to, not even close. Now, with all that in mind, let's answer our original 3 questions about money's essence. First, what is money? Well, quite simply, money is the tool people use to trade and measure wealth. For instance, I can trade this $20 for a nice steak dinner, or I can throw it onto a pile with my other $20 bills and count them all up. And as already established, gold has been used as money for centuries, and I can literally weigh my gold to discern its approximate value. Our second question was, why is money valuable? Let's think about American dollars first. Well, as already established, one piece of paper is essentially worthless. But how does the subjective theory of value explain the demand for dollars? Well, one, there's a historical bias and ignorance at play here. Even though a decent amount of us are old enough to remember 1971, a lot of us aren't either. And that was when the last vestige of the gold standard was severed by Nixon, and when, frankly, inflation really took off in a big way. And then, of course, the vast majority of us don't remember what it was like in 1933 before FDR came along with his executive order. And second, Americans, by and large, have an enormous amount of faith in their government. If it says $20 on the front, then by in God we trust, it's $20. Third, the Fed and the government have a legal monopoly on the money supply, as evidenced by Executive Order 6102. So that's a big factor, obviously, as well. People are afraid to go against the government. And finally, number 4 is the historical link to gold that makes paper money acceptable in exchange. Of course, again, this link has been severed for decades. Here is the Fed's own data about the amount of money actually in circulation. Now, the point to remember and note here is not the actual numbers, but just look at what the trend is over time. You'll see as we start off here in 1959, we've got less than $300 billion in circulation. Now, as you notice, we go along here over time, it keeps going higher and higher. But not only that, with each passing decade, it seems like the trend line, it keeps getting steeper and steeper as we go along through time. You see, sort of like the monopoly bank, it seems like the Federal Reserve cannot run out of money either, as long as they can just keep on printing it. Now, I can hear some of you arguing that, we should use a different measure here, but frankly, whether I use the adjusted monetary base or the true money supply championed by the Mises Institute, the trends are all the same, which is just more and more money being printed. After our peek at that chart, it's undeniable the money supply has steadily increased over time. But has the regular person's wealth increased? Let's look at it from the savers or hoarders perspective, to use FDR's language. In the first Austin Powers movie, Dr. Evil emerges in the 1990s after being cryogenically frozen in the 1960s. Let's see what happens when he tries to hold up the United States government for ransom.
If you want it back, you're going to have to pay me $1 million. Sorry. $100 billion.
Gentlemen, silence.
Notice the cabinet laughs in Dr. Evil's face for daring to think that $1 million is a lot of money. This is a common reaction to older people complaining about how things used to be cheaper.
And in those days, nickels had pictures of bumblebees on them. Give me 5 B's for a quarter, you'd say. Now, where were we? Oh, yeah. The important thing was that I had an onion on my belt.
We tend to just think it's one of those, okay, old guy, yeah, you used to walk both ways uphill in the snow to school, too. We got it. But the truth is, there are real negative consequences to money supply inflation. Most consider pure savings to be safe and prudent, but if Dr. Evil had
$1 million.
stuffed away in his hollowed-out volcano in the 1960s, he would have been a heck of a lot better off hoarding $1 million worth of gold. And people without savings? Well, they had better pray that their wages keep up with rising prices. But most likely, those people and their employers will be the late receivers of the new money, as it will have already been exchanged many, many times before it actually reaches them. During that process, the cost of other goods, including essentials, rise. So to answer the question, are money and wealth the same thing? That is a resounding no. Wealth is goods and services, and again, money is not wealth. It is what we use to measure and trade wealth more easily. Money is easily exchanged because it is fungible, meaning a $20 bill is the same as any other $20 bill, just as an ounce of gold is an ounce of gold. This is not the case for most goods and services. For instance, if you're a baker, try literally paying your bar tab at a local brewery with a blueberry cobbler instead of money. Your server will look at you like a crazy person, and with good cause. But if you spent your day baking and selling pies, you could accurately say you paid your bar tab that night by baking with your production. That's the beauty of money right there. See, even if the bar owner is on a low-carb, non-blueberry cobbler friendly diet, money allows you to pay that person by baking with your productive baking throughout the day and selling to other people. You see, this is going to seem very elementary, but notice that the baker must produce the cobbler before a customer can consume it. Duh, right? Well, likewise, the baker must produce the cobbler before she can consume her beer and nachos at the bar. Of course, assuming she has no savings nor credit. But even if the lady has credit, something must be first produced before it can be lent to her by the credit card company. And savings is obviously the hoarding, to use FDR's term, of past production in order to consume in the future. Production always comes before consumption, except in the case of fraud and counterfeit. If I pay somebody with counterfeit money, that is consuming without producing, which is immoral and illegal. But when the Fed produces money out of thin air, which has nothing to do with anything productive nor real, they call it monetary policy or quantitative easing. They certainly don't call it illegal. There, consumption comes first and production is assumed to come later. Or worse, production isn't even considered at all. The obvious misunderstanding here is that Fed policymakers erroneously believe that money is wealth and not goods and services that must first be created. So what kind of person would believe such poppycock? Well, how about the most influential economist of our time, Mr. John Maynard Keynes? Yes, the guy who is the king of Keynesian economics and the man who popularized the idea that hoarding, or what I would call saving, is bad for the economy. We'll examine the life and philosophies of Keynes next time, because although I do disagree with him on a heck of a lot, he is undeniably one of the most important figures of our time. I'll see you there.